New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Why, hello there. It's me, yes, me, Bonnie Gonzalez, your doula for grief. Welcome to today's program. I'm so glad that you could join me. A little bit about me before I forget. I am a grief coach. I'm a certified grief educator, registered nurse, religious science practitioner, soul collage facilitator, and most importantly, a human being right here on the planet with you during these beautiful times, auspicious, crazy, but lovely times in this thing called life. So we're all in this together. Oh, what is that expression? We're all better together. So anyway, I just want to welcome you again and say, if this is your first time joining me, yes, you have come to the right place to begin your journey of healing from grief. And if you are a returning viewer, oh my goodness, I am so honored and privileged to have you back and to know that we have that kind of relationship, that you trust me and you come back. And so what I would love for you to do is just drop a comment or a question in the comment box. Let us know you're here. Let us know where you're watching from even. And with that said, after dropping your comment, or before you drop your comment, why don't you sit back and make this time, make this hour for and about you. Get yourself a cup of tea, glass of water, whatever you need, glass of wine, whatever makes you happy right now. Grab that and come back. I'll talk a few minutes before we bring our beautiful guest on. And before we dive into the program, I'll say, as you're going to get your tea, that our theme today is near-death experiences, calling it a second chance to live. How exciting is that? But before we delve into the near-death experience, I want to talk a little bit about, what grief and loss is. That's what this program is about. I'm your doula for grief. And grief is caused by loss. And not all losses include a death. Of course, death is the biggest loss, the biggest hole we will ever have blown through our hearts is from death. And my guest is going to talk a little bit about that as well with her near-death experience. But what I was going to say is that, I see I have my beautiful friend Megan, who is watching from home. And Megan is very close to me in my heart and physically living close. And I was saying that not all losses are death. We have living losses. That's what I refer them to. We refer to them as a living loss. And those losses come in all shapes, forms, and fashions. And the first one that comes to mind is divorce or loss of relationship, health issues, loss of your health, loss of mobility. Aging can be seen as a loss. The ability to take care of yourself, if that should happen, that is a loss. And so then, therefore, we are just thrust into the arms of grief. And grief, as much as we would like to run from it, not see it, not feel it, not be with it. But grief has a superpower, and grief's superpower is healing. So just to think about that. The very thing that we run from is the very thing that has the solution, that has the solace, that has the information for you. And no one can go through a grieving a period or episode or situation without coming out on the other end as a totally different person. Or not, even if you're not totally different or changed, there are some aspects about yourself that you've discovered. There's some characteristics about yourself that you've discovered. And I bet you they're positive. I bet you they're positive. So with that said, just to get that out of the way of loss and grief, and also, I know I've said this before, but I want to give us all a pat on the back, a kudos or attagirls and attaboys, because we are really broaching a subject, engaging in a subject that is the number one thing not talked about in our society, and that is grief. And here we are just taking it head on. Here we are just embracing it and saying yes and not running from it. So with that said, I say thank you, thank you, thank you. And now then we'll get back to the theme of the show today is, is near-death experience, sis, a second chance to live. And I just have the most lovely, the most knowledgeable guest on this subject that we could find. I'll call her the expert because she has participated in a lot of studies here. And I'll just read her bio. And her name is June Eguchi. And Jean is from Seattle, Washington. And she's now here in the Lake Chapala area. And June is a licensed massage therapist for 26 years, specializing in injury treatment massage. June is a second-degree Reiki practitioner. She was a member of the Board of Massage Examiners for the state of Washington. And also June was on the board, she was a board member of Seattle International Association for the Near-Death Studies for a decade. That's what makes her the expert. And her near-death experience in 1973, due to her hepatitis B contracted from her brother, she found herself to be in a coma and then having a near-death experience. And enough on that, because I think the best way to hear and know more about this is to bring June out here herself and let her share her story with us. So June, June was there. We were having little internet issues earlier, so I wasn't sure that she's there. But there she is in all her beautiful shining glory. Welcome, June. Or welcome back. Thank you. Yeah, June is returning because her story was just so fascinating and it's such a rich and deep topic because, June, I think it's one of those areas that has an enigma, has some mystery around it, but I feel that there's answers in those near-death experiences. So anyway, welcome, Jean and June. And you just let me know whatever you would like to share before we jump into your story.
Thank you, Bonnie. My feeling is that the reason the near-death experiences are so important for we living to know about is that it really eases the grief of a lot of people to not wonder where their loved ones are going. I think that's the biggest fear a lot of us have when we have a death loss is that, where do they go? We don't know. And by knowing what happens to us, where we go, I really hope to be able to ease some of the grief that people go through and the pain of not knowing. And if you know that they're going to a better place, why would you grieve that? And if you
Yes.
know that they're, they're in heaven where they want to be and where they should be, why would we grieve that? We're going to miss our people. Of course we do. We're physical beings. We can't
Oh,
see them, touch them, hear them. We miss them terribly because we're so physical. But when you
yes.
understand the celestial and the ethereal part of our souls and where we go to, then we know that we don't die. That part of the
Yes.
consciousness doesn't die. The body's gone, of course. These bodies were not designed to live for several hundred years as we know it, although some people do claim that we are capable of living longer than that. But, and the average life here is 100. And I don't know
Well,
if I want to live to be
I was
300.
just going to say, what in the current climate, I don't know if I could take 200 years of this.
Yeah,
of
no
this
shit.
It's like, I don't think I
So
could
for
last.
those,
And there was one other thing that the most important thing that I heard you say is that it can alleviate some of that suffering that we have with feeling death is so final. And the other piece that I want to add to that, June, I think it could help each one of us with our own deaths. A spoiler alert, nobody gets out alive, but
yeah.
it could help us come to terms with our own death and
Well,
be
it takes the fear out of dying. And I think a lot of the
yes.
fear comes as a result of our Christianity that unfortunately has taught or told us about heaven and hell. And we have to realize that not all of this may have been true. And it's that fear of going to hell if you haven't been the perfect person. Well, nobody is, not even Jesus was. We're people, we're
Yeah,
humans.
we're
We
human.
learn experientially through mistakes. That's how
Yeah.
we learn. So I think there's a lot of reasons, and there's a lot of reasons I think that a lot more people are coming forth with this experience.
Mhm.
Because in the past, and even the military, we now have an arm of the near-death IANS group, which is the International Association for Near-Death Studies. We now have a vice president who was a veteran of Vietnam.
Mhm.
And she has started a veteran outreach program because the VA is telling these people they're crazy and putting them on antidepressants.
Yeah,
They're
that's
they're not recognizing the experience to say, yes, you did have an experience. No, you're not crazy. You and thousands of other soldiers who almost died went
mhm.
through this experience, and there's nothing wrong with you. That's what
Right.
we're there to tell these veterans. And we started this veteran outreach about 7 years ago because of this
This is
veteran
new.
that's part
This
of
is
our
new.
board. Well, it is fairly new. And then as a vet herself and as a military nurse, she realized that we need to help these vets, know that they're not crazy. But they're not making this shit up. They're not dreaming it. It's not psychosis. It is a
Mhm.
real experience. And you don't need to be on antidepressants. You need to talk about this.
Right, right. Well, June, I'm so glad you brought that up. For some reason, I want you to be Jean today, even though I know you're June.
See that? That's okay. We understand.
No, June, what I was going to say to that antidepressant, I'll just call it saga, is that's what happens when people are in grief. They go to the physician, they're feeling, grief affects us physically. And the first thing that happens is that they're put on antidepressants. And that's really
No,
not the
well,
cure.
the problem
Because
with our medical system is that we're overloaded. Doctors no longer talk to their people. They talk to our body parts. They're so highly specialized. We have hearts, ear, nose, and throat doctors, cardiologists, internal doctors, orthopedic doctors. So they've chopped up us up in little pieces,
yeah,
but they
right.
forgot
And
to
body
integrate the holistic self. We are no longer holistic in our approach. And the
right.
whole starts at the brain. This is where it
Mm,
all starts. Our
yes.
brain controls the rest of us. And if we omit that and just look at our body parts, because every body part is responding to something going on cranially. It starts in our brain. We have to start with our thinking.
Wow. And that's so true, because with this being in grief, what's happening is that there's more of a yearning to be with your loved one. There's a yearning to be, and antidepressants are not going to stop the yearning, which is a natural state of being.
And the yearning, and how I handled the yearning of missing my mother is I continue to talk to her. I say, hey, Mom, look at this beautiful place I have in Mexico. Hey, Mom, thanks for helping me out, financially, so I can afford this. And several years ago, when I talked to a dear friend of mine who happens to be a psychic that can be in touch with people in the afterworld, I know we were talking about a lot of things, and she goes, oh, yeah, by the way, your mother wants to say thank you for continuing to talk to her. She hears you. And she really appreciates that, you include her in your life and you have not forgotten about her. So they do hear us.
Yeah.
So I talk as though she were here, and that helps with my pain a lot. And I can't see her, so I'll talk to her.
Wow. June, you're getting ahead of me. We're getting ahead of our story, because that is just what you said just now is what has stuck with me and stayed with me this entire year that you were on last August. And those are the exact words that have stayed with me. And so I want to come back to those words and come back to that. But before that, I thought maybe you should just give the audience that didn't hear you last year just a little update or a brief what happened, what was your near-death experience, and then we can build on that.
Okay. First of all, death itself is described as a loss of respiration and heartbeat, which means your body has died. And being in a coma, I actually did not die. I was still breathing. I still had heartbeat, but my consciousness was deciding whether to stay or to leave. And my experience during this coma was that I did not know I was in a coma. I thought I was in a really bad dream, because I've worked in hospitals. I know the sound of respirators and, bright lights and everything that goes on in ICU. So I kept thinking, God, what a crappy dream, because I'd be conscious that there was a bright light shining. I couldn't open my eyes.
Yeah.
Heard a gentle, loving voice of the nurse saying, you're very, very sick. You're in the University of Washington Hospital, but you're going to be fine. You're going to be okay. And every once in a while, I would hear her voice. And upon seeking this nurse out, when I left the hospital, I realized that she was a graveyard shift nurse. So that was a time of day that my consciousness had elevated enough that I could hear her.
Yes,
which broke my mother's heart, because she was sitting there all day for 18 hours and talked to me all day, and I never heard her at all.
You didn't do anything.
But it just goes into to show you that that's, when my brain decided to be conscious of the wee hours of the graveyard shift. So after 10 days of this terrible dream, I opened my eyes, and there I was in ICU at the hospital. And
totally lucid? Were you totally lucid at that point?
I was very lucid at that point, very sick, very weak, because with hepatitis B, you have a complete liver shutdown. So I was very jaundiced, yellow, skin was broken out, and it was very, very ugly physically, because I was very, very sick. And so they transferred me to a private room that day. And I was sleeping on and off because, of course, you're tired. The body just needs to rest and recuperate. But I woke up to an ever so gentle, soft touch against my face and opened my eyes. And there was a lovely woman with golden auburn hair, lovely hands, just glowing. And it looked like the Virgin Mary, except for the auburn colored hair, not the dark hair. And she said, you're going to be just fine, and then dissipated. And I thought that I had seen the Virgin Mary, but 10 years later, through my profession, I met a woman who's a psychic visionary artist. So I hired her to meditate with me, and she did a pastel drawing of who she saw standing behind me
Mm.
as we were working together. And it was that woman that was standing next to my bed. And this is like 10, 15 years after the fact. That was more like 20 years after the fact that I
Wow.
happened to meet this artist. So I now have a drawing of Amuliaf Ciel, who has been my lifetime spirit guide. And that's
I
how it
was
was explained to me by this artist that, you know, Amuliaf, as she said, do you recognize a name? No. But I did
wow.
recognize her beautiful hands because I have really lovely hands similar to hers.
Mhm.
And she says, yeah, Amuliaf has been with you your whole life. And so now I have a picture of my spirit guide, and I know who's with me to protect me every day. And so that was probably, that was a very amazing gift out of my near-death experience and the vision of seeing her. This is the only time in my life I've ever seen her.
Mhm.
And now I know that she's with me.
Yes,
That's
and
pretty cool.
there's beyond cool, because I was going to ask you what you feel. I think you've kind of alluded to that, what you feel about that experience with her at that time. It sounds like it took some years before it became truly integrated, what you're saying, the significance
Yeah,
of her.
because I saw her, and it was 20 years later that I actually, you know, that other woman saw her, the same
Mhm.
person that I saw upon waking up from my coma. And it was just lovely to be
Yeah,
able to, I now have it hanging in front of my bed that I see her every night. And I
right.
think what it does for me is to make me feel less alone, because I've
Okay.
now chosen, you know, for my retirement, a life of being alone and not taking on any partners, because I know
Mhm.
that I have a partner. I
Ah,
have a Mulia,
yeah.
and
Wow.
and I know that I'm never alone, and I know that she will protect me. And now that I know her name, I even talk to her. And then when
Right.
I'm in a tight situation, I say, "Okay, Amelia,
I
it's
was
you
just
and me. Let's do our thing," you know?
I was just going to ask, do you consult with her? Do you sit with her? Do you meditate with her? What's your connection with her now, if that's not too
Well,
personal?
I just know that she's there, and a lot of times I've noticed recently, you know, in the last 10 years or so, when I get in a tight spot, I find myself talking to her
Hmm.
because I
Hmm.
know she's there to protect me.
Wow, Jude. I love that you have her, as you said, you've chosen to be in relationship with your guardian angel. It just makes me think of a Buddhist quote that talks about uh, the reason for maybe our unhappiness and some of our suffering is that we base our happiness on transient things. And if you think about it, everything in life is transient except your guardian angel, except your angel.
And our love from God, that
Yes,
never wavers. And a lot
yes.
of us just forget that, or don't, you know, realize that they're always there to call upon.
Hmm.
And because we don't get verbal answers that we hear, we think that nothing's happening. But when you watch your life transform in hindsight, you see that there was help.
Yes,
That
exactly.
did not turn out as bad as they could have, you know, they were there
Hmm.
to help us.
Right, right.
So a lot of it is just, you know, well, just like our belief in God, you know, most of us, even the near-death experience, don't actually see a, well, and it's, first of all, it's not the God of the art that we
Yeah,
see. We
yes, with
somehow
the
got,
long hair and the white robe.
yeah, right,
And
and the blue eyes and the, you know,
yeah,
no, that's a
yeah.
white man's God.
Or that's a
And
personification of God. That's a
perspective, yeah, perspective
of God,
of
if you
someone else's perspective of God.
will.
And first of all, you know, they say we were made in God's image, so we tend to put a human face on God, and
Mhm.
that's exactly not where it's at either. You
Yes.
know, and with the near-death experiencers, the people who have actually stopped the respiration, stopped their
Right.
heartbeat, their body died, where they went and what they saw were huge beings of light,
Mm,
I
that
mean, there's
yes,
form, human has form, but they're just light. We don't see eyes, ears, nose, we don't see any of that. And they say the
right.
brightest light of all is what they interpret as having been the God light.
And that is what brings in the solstice, the all-knowing, the knowledge, the information that comes in. And from what I've heard, and you'll talk too about other people's experiences, is that when people come back, they no longer have that fear of death. That is totally removed, and
Right.
not
Because in fact, it's so much so that a lot of people are pissed off that they've been revived. And brought back. I've
yeah,
talked to EMTs and ambulance drivers, that said, "Oh yeah, tell me about it." And I just restarted this guy's heart, and what I get, he slaps me and gets mad at me for bringing him back. And I was in such a beautiful place. What am I doing here? I'm in pain. My chest hurts,
yeah. What do
because
you?
on the other side, all that goes away. You're not in your body, so there is no pain. And that
Yes.
there's nothing but beauty and love. In fact, one of the things that I hear over and over from near-death experiencers was that they, in fact, the one thing that people and myself had asked, why me? Why did I not flee? Why did I not die? Because after 10
Right.
years, 10 days in a coma, the doctors were warning my parents that, her body's going to die soon. You can't
Mhm.
be in this state, and we don't know whether she'll be vegetative when she comes back or not.
Yes. Mm.
And my personal experience is called a spiritual transformative experience,
Right. I
in that
have that.
it is not a true near-death experience because I didn't really die. But what I got out of, being conscious again and in my body and mind was, okay, why me? Why did I not die? I
Mhm.
should have died and I didn't. Why? And so it transforms my spirit because at that stage I was 21 years old, very
Yeah.
much involved in the 70s and sex, drugs, and rock and roll, baby,
Yeah.
and I was going down this huge rabbit hole. But
Mhm.
it really changed me in the respect that I needed to find out why I'm still alive. Okay, this has been a gift. So I'm supposed
Yeah.
to do something with this, do something with my life instead of just having fun. And I'm going to read you a tagline from the IONS newsletter from the Seattle IONS group. Because every few months I get a newsletter, a writing of someone else's experience. And that
Okay.
was the beauty of being in Seattle IONS for a decade, because every month we had a speakers meeting. We'd have a different person and their experience of what they experienced when their body died.
Yes.
And so I've heard all of the stories, the good as well as the bad. It's not all good.
Oh yeah. I was
Some
gonna
people
say.
have horrific experiences
Uh-huh.
and they go to a scary place and they do come back, but that was part of their learning experience. They have to learn how to lift themselves out of this dark, scary place and
Mm.
realize that with the love of God, everything heals and you don't have to be in this dark place.
Mm.
So the reason why a lot of us come back is that I've been put here on earth to care about other people and for them to care about me.
Mm.
And that's the
Yes.
big that I came back with, because almost all of we near-death experiencers and spiritually transformed people, the message that we get is, yeah, we're here to help other people. So we come back to helping professions,
Mm.
psychotherapists, nurses, myself, I became a massage therapist,
That's
and
good.
because
Yeah, that's a healer.
background
Yes.
my background in education was psychology, so with my psychology, I was able to perform the whole body soul healing treatment, because I knew how to talk to people to bring out their emotional pain, which is then now causing their physical pain. Therefore,
Mm.
we work through those, we talk about it. So they kind of got a 2-for-1 session from me. I would release their physical pain as I'm asking them, okay, so what are you thinking when you feel this pain? Oh yeah, I remember this incident, where when my husband was beating me, when my dad, hit me, my mother was mean to me. And then so we heal that emotional issue, and somehow well, it's not somehow, the physical issue dissipates because of the body mind connection. Our
Yes.
muscles have memories, we have cellular memory. So our
Mm-hmm.
cells remember the injury, we remember the
Oh,
incident of
yes.
injury. So when
Yes.
you work on both levels of releasing the physiology as well as releasing the brain trauma, the memories of that, we can
Mm-hmm.
indeed start the healing process of releasing it.
Wow.
So that's what I learned from, my background, because I went to school, I wanted to be a psychologist, and then I started realizing what the work of a psychotherapist is,
Psychologist. Oh,
and I
the
thought, I
dream.
don't want to do that. I do
The
not
dream.
want to sit there all day and listen to everybody else's problems. That's not at all what I want to do for a living. So
But
I quit my psychotherapy, but then when I learned the physical therapies and learning how to integrate the two, that made a lot of sense to me.
yeah,
And I was a
more.
very successful massage therapist, because people used to say, wow, June, we get like, I feel so much better on so many levels.
Yeah.
You didn't just work on the physical pain, you worked on the deep underlying issue behind that pain.
And what you were doing, June, is what I call hands-on healing.
Correct.
Psychotherapists, love them. They do that deep, mental work. But then I also did. I have a massage certification in Asian system of
Okay.
shiatsu and jin do, which
Mhm.
is the energy. So yes, that's a hand-on healing. And then I got to be a nurse. But I wanted to ask you, June, I know you were very young. You were 21 when this happened. And I want to know immediately afterwards, once you were able to, physically be able to take care of yourself, what was going on with you? Where were you in your, healing modality work, or had you even thought of healing modality work when this near-death experience?
No, I was actually an admin assistant at the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, or newspaper, during that time. But my
Okay.
personal life, I was living with my high school boyfriend and my younger brother, who I had legal custody of, because my
Oh,
brother and I grew up in a physically abusive household.
I
So
see.
he was 15, I had turned 21, and in order for him to not be delinquent, I had to assume legal responsibility for him as a guardian. So I was my
Mm-hmm.
younger brother's guardian. And then my boyfriend and younger brother started becoming heroin users. So I was living
Gosh.
in a junkie house. I came
Yes.
home to these guys, vegged out and, having shot up. And I actually saved the life of a friend by doing CPR and walking him
Mm.
around, who had OD'd at my house. So
Wow.
that was how I got the hepatitis B, was
Wow.
one of them in their heroin addict
Yes.
wisdom thought that giving
Mhm.
me a shot of heroin while I was sleeping was going to help me. Well, that puts the liver into complete distress. It shut
Yeah.
down my liver. I was in a coma the next morning. So I was ambulanced to the hospital. So when I got out of the hospital, I saw the reality of what I was living in. And I thought,
Mm.
this is not
See,
me. I'm not a junkie. I'm not a user. I don't
right.
belong here. I don't want any part of this shit. So I moved out, and at
Oh,
21, that's when I really started my life of seeing, okay, then who am I? I'm
yes.
not that, I'm not any part of that scene. I never was.
Mm-hmm.
And the other time that happened was upon my retirement to Mexico.
Oh no,
That
what
was
happened?
just a few years ago. Well, what happened was to find myself not identified to my vocation, but to find my avocation and to find who is June Eguchi, not June Eguchi massage therapist, June Eguchi admin assistant, don't
Mm-hmm.
identify, because while we're working, we always identify with what we do. Oh, it's nice to meet
Yes,
you,
we
Bonnie. What do you
do.
do?
And
We
what
always go to
exactly
that,
our
and that
identity.
becomes our identity, is what we do for a living. Well, I'm
Yeah.
retired. I'm no longer doing anything for a living. So who am me? Who is June Eguchi? And
Right.
after several years of being here and finding myself rushing to, rescue dogs, rescue people, and help people, because now I have time. My friends are sick, I cook them food, I bring them food. Somebody needs a ride, I give them a ride because I have a car. And I realized that, I'm June Eguchi, helper.
Mm.
I'm a helper
Ah,
person.
yeah.
That
Yeah.
is my role. That's what makes me the happiest, is to help someone in whatever
Right.
capacity that's shown to me.
Right. Oh,
So,
wow.
um,
So
so
another
the
epiphany.
identity as we change. Yeah. So, my first identity was after having lived instead of dying. And then
Yes.
now, having changed my life from a working individual to a retired individual, who am
Hmm.
I is an essence of me, no
Yes.
longer identified with what I do.
Yes.
So that
Oh,
was a really cool gift of retirement as well.
yes. Yes. I was just going to acknowledge that Megan is with us. I think I said that. Now, Wayne. I know Wayne is from Calgary, and I am now Captain Bonnie, so you can address me as that.
Okay, Captain Bunny.
Captain Bonnie. I like that. But I want to go back to the near death experience, because you said something that yours was classified as oh gosh, where did I write it down? A spiritual,
Transformative.
I'm sorry, I have a little noise.
Spiritually, yes, spiritually transformative
A
experience.
spiritually transformative experience. So, with that said, I wanted to ask if there are different degrees, different levels of near death experiences. Is there like categories? Category 1 is a spiritually transformative. Category 2 is, are there different, for lack of a better word, degrees of near death experiences?
Yes, and there was one thing, might be looking at the wrong pile here. Yes, because the reason why this organization, IONS, is called international is because it is an international association and an international experience.
Mm-hmm.
And your experience will then depend on your cultural background, your religious background, everything that's been taught to you in the past. So
I
if you were a
see.
Muslim in the Middle East, you're going to see Muhammad. We in
I
the Christian world
see.
tend to see Jesus or God,
Mhm.
and the Buddhists might see Buddha.
Right.
And the children who have no such experience, a prior experience. In fact, there's a woman who's recently completed a book on children's near-death experiences that
Oh,
I have
yeah.
not read, which should be very interesting, because they don't have the language to explain what they saw and what happened to them.
Right.
Neither do adults for that fact, but with children, they have limited experience and limited language. So they draw pictures of what they saw, very pretty place. They draw pictures of someone that might look like Buddha or Jesus. Um, and they just explain being happy and peaceful and nice.
Right.
So
I was going to ask,
it all
right?
relates to your experience at that point of your life.
Right. Hold that thought, because I wanted to ask you about a conversation that you and my producer Joe were having before we were on air. And Joe was telling us that he did have a near death experience, and he was only 5. And he was saying that he could see himself, he was sitting up on top of the refrigerator looking down at them doing the first attempts, I guess, historical CPR. But then you said something that most people do on the refrigerator. I'll let you take it from there. Why did you
Okay.
find his story to be so common?
It is a common thread of a person who's of a soul which leaves the body at the time of death, or
Mhm.
or trauma. And almost everybody that's in the ER, in a hospital room or whatever, speaks of sitting in the right corner of the ceiling of a room and then looking down on their bodies.
Yes.
So there's something about the right corner of a ceiling. none of us been really able to explain why that is, but they said, yeah, I remember sitting in the right corner of the, emergency room, looking down and watching the doctors trying to revive me. And this doctor said that doctor said that. And when they come back and tell the doctors what the doctor said, they are freaked out.
Yes.
How can you possibly know that you were dead? Your heart was gone. You were not breathing. We were trying to revive you. You were dead. How could you hear us?
June,
they
that
do.
is so true. It's so true, because I was a nurse I was an intensive care nurse for like 25 years, and had a lot of patients that we did resuscitate, and they're not successfully. Let's say that there were a lot of
not all of them.
Not all of them, but I remember one patient, I had taken care of him a few days before, and was taking care of him that day, that he had a cardiac arrest. But what was so amazing, this man had the thickest glasses. Well, what did we used to call them? Coke bottle glasses. They were so thick. I don't even think he could see the hand in front of his face if he didn't have these glasses on. But anyway, so he didn't have his glasses on. He had a cardiac arrest, and he was a successful resuscitation. And afterwards, after all the dust that settles, really, there's a lot going on when people are resuscitated. And afterwards, there's still a lot more going on. But then the next day when I took care of him, he was able to tell me exactly what happened, which doctors came. And he said, I was up there in the right corner, right there, looking down. And this is the part. This is the part that blew me away. I'm thinking, yeah, you could whatever. And he said it was one doctor that came in, and he had a briefcase, and his name was on the briefcase, and the name was Rowenda Singh. And he could see that. And there's no way that he would have known that doctor had never come with that suitcase.
Because he was dead.
He was, so that was one of those that made a believer out of me, that I was able to, ask him what was going on when that happened. But here's what he talked about. He talked about, okay, seeing everybody. Then he did go to the light, and then he went down a tunnel and saw someone that was shining a coffin, getting it all ready. And I think he said to them, oh, that's for me. And the person said, no, it's not for you. It's not your time. It's not ready. And then boom, he was back. And so I am definitely a believer. And June, what do you say to those people that say, oh, those people are just having hallucinations because they're without oxygen and without blood flow, and so they start hallucinating, and none of this is really the truth? What do you say to those skeptics?
Well, there's a distinct difference in science. This is where science and quantum science break apart. The science needs hard facts and proof, measurable proof, and there's no measurement to quantum physics. It's all in the quantum field of things that nobody can explain. They don't know how to explain it, but there's the near-death experience, looking at the international authors, the number of people that come to our conventions. There are millions of us.
Wow.
There are millions all over the globe. And how can millions of people all be all that screwed up in the head and wrong? Is my thinking. We can't all make this shit up. We didn't know each other, we don't even, this guy's in India, I don't know him, and he's saying the same thing that I said.
Right.
And this guy from Copenhagen that's written 15 books on his experience that's saying exactly the same thing, right. So it just goes to show you, and the older I get, the more I realize the fallacy of science. We have some big holes in science.
Yeah,
and because we demand scientific facts that have to be proven, if in science, if they can't measure it and see it, it doesn't exist. Well, there's a whole other realm of the quantum world. Yes.
And in quantum physics,
the reason I know it exists. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you finish and then I'll go back. No, you're the guest.
So the reason why that makes sense to me is that, there's just too many people saying the same thing. And how can you
Mm,
deny that and say that it's not true when these people, there's just millions of us that are saying the same thing.
yes, yes.
There
And
has to be
I just,
something in it.
yeah, and I just wanted to ask you, I guess we don't want to get too deep into quantum physics, but is there anything, any book that you could recommend on quantum physics? I just know a little bit. I know a little. I know enough about quantum physics to be dangerous. How's that? I know enough
Well,
about it to.
myself as well. But at one of the conventions, it was so interesting. There's a Korean doctor. He has a doctorate. He has like 7 doctorate degree PhDs, and he started out being a scientist, and then he went into several fields of science, and then became a medical doctor. And this man is an education junkie. So he has
Okay.
been on the
Fiction.
quest for spirit. Quest for
Yes.
spirit in whatever realm and level he can think of. And when all else failed in the field of hard sciences that could not answer his question, he went into spirituality. That's where he found
Ooh,
his answers.
that is
It's in
quite.
spiritual studies, it's not in science.
Mm. I think because science dismisses so much, we miss so much. There's a lot of
Correct.
there's lots of nuggets and information to be found in what has been dismissed by science. And so and so with that, June, I really love that idea of quantum physics being able to answer some of our questions. And I remember reading a book. It's not that old. Journey of the Souls. Does that ring a bell?
Hmm.
Journey of the Souls.
Yes.
That was quite involved in.
Yes, I have
And
not personally read it, but it sounds,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I
but
know I've heard about it.
yeah, that had a lot of information if one is interested about what happens with near-death experiences and the beyond. I always wonder, well, what happens after the white light? then what? And that's what this book does. It goes beyond, the people that see the white light and talk about
Well,
what's.
unfortunately, beyond the white light, you're dead. Dead. You don't come back to tell us about it.
Oh no,
That's when
that's
you're thoroughly dead.
exactly. You're done for.
That's why we don't hear about it. Those people never came back.
And that's what this oh, I think he's a psychotherapist does, and I think he does it under hypnosis. And
Okay.
I was going to say, have you ever had any hypnosis or to help you explain anything or any interest in hypnosis as far as past lives or this?
I did a past life regression once, but I mean, I was hysterical because I'm such a control freak that I had to have my husband in the room with me. I did not trust the hypnotherapist to be alone
Oh,
with me. It was really
wow.
weird. And he
Shoot.
did bring me down several lifetimes, but on bringing us down to the hypno level, and he goes, "Okay, you're under deep hypnosis." I said, "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are." "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are."
Well,
I was arguing with the
like,
hypnotherapist.
it sounds like maybe that wasn't the right time, the right person, or any of that was right, but at
Yeah,
least you tried. I'll put it that way. Oh
it
my
was.
God.
I just was cracking him up. He says, "I have never seen hypnotize anybody like you. You really don't want to be hypnotized, see?" And I said, "No, I think it's a control issue. I
Yeah.
don't want you to have control of me." And so,
Well,
I had trouble being hypnotized.
what was your motivating factor to have it done? What led you there to
I
do
was
it?
just curious about my past lives.
I
And what
see.
I did see, I was at a level where I looked at my hands and I was in a man's body. I saw male hands in front of me, and I can't see myself because there's no mirror. And I
Right.
remember it was a dirt floor, a stacked mud type of shed or house, rough
Mm-hmm.
hewn wood table, and it looked like I was wearing a long robe type of garment, and I had male hands.
Mm.
So that was explained to me that that was probably at a lifetime when I was most likely in Essene, way back in the biblical days, because it looked like I was sitting in a, shack out of the Bible, what people would describe in those days.
Right, right. Wow. Yeah, I was in that curiosity mode as well of having past life regressions, and it was quite interesting. But I can't believe, June, that we're at time, and I have this whole page of questions here that I didn't get to ask you. But I'm just going to ask you to. Oh, one thing, if we have a few minutes, that you talked about is that that there are people that have multiple near-death experiences.
Yeah, and they can't understand why they have had so many multiple experiences. In fact, Kim Clark Sharp, who has written the book, I think, Going to the Light. She's written several books on several of our NDEs, but we'd laugh because she's a really good soul. And I said, well, some of us are just more dense than others. You got to go through it several times in order to get it. Because she has had 2 in her childhood and then 1 or 2 as an adult. And we don't know why some people have to go through so much. Maybe we're stubborn, maybe, I don't know.
Or maybe you need a touch-up or a tune-up. You have to be a tune-up from the first one. You need to be tuned up.
Yeah, you didn't get it the first time, so let's try it again.
Right.
I don't know, but there are many people that have described being, in near death several times in their lifetime.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. And so since we are at time, June, I have a little housekeeping to do afterwards. Is there anything you want to leave us with about near-death experience? It's been a wonderful conversation. And thanking Wayne, he's missed being read to. Tell Wayne, if you hang around, I'll read something at the end. I'll read to you then. Okay. June, is there anything?
Okay, this is, yes, this is from a newsletter. It says, Connecting the Dots, the After Effects of My NDE. And this is by my friend Kathy Sterling in Seattle. And it was written, most important life lessons have been self-love, broad-minded thoughts and principles, kindness for all mankind and earth. That's why we're here.
Could you read that just one more time? I just want to hear it once more.
Yes. Most important life lessons have been self-love, broad-minded thoughts and principles, kindness for all of mankind and earth.
Beautiful, beautiful, June. Thank you for ending with that. June, thank you. I'd love to have you back at any time. And I love that compassion and kindness and self-love, self-love. And
because everything starts with self-love.
Yes, yes, yes. And so thank you. I'm going to do a little housekeeping, but hang around. June, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Convention of the Americas that's happening right here in Chapala on August 6th through August 10th. There's a flyer, and it's happening right here at the Monte Carlo Hotel. And all are welcome. It's going to be a 4-day convention. It happens every year. People from all over the world come. Some great speakers will be there as well. So thank you, Joe. And if you want to register, it's just www.conventionoftheamericas.com, conventionoftheamericas.com. And Megan here is saying that she wants you to come back, June, and maybe you and Megan come back together. I keep threatening Megan to have her on the show. I'm going to go out to her house and kind of sneak up on her and record. So thank you, June.
I'll be happy to.
And I want to say, June, oh, thank you. And I just want to read something here. I promise, Wayne, I will read And this is from a little book. It's called Life Lessons by Julie Cameron. You know, the woman that wrote, what is it? The Artist's Way, Julia Cameron. And it's relating to what you said, June, about death not being final. And here's what I will read from this book. And it says, Mourning one, you have lost a beloved. At least that is how it feels to you. In reality, your beloved lives on. Death is but a portal to a new and expanded life. Life survives death. You can make contact with those who have passed beyond. Take pen in hand. Address a loving note to your beloved. Listen for a reply. Loving words will come to you. Your beloved loves you still. And I think, June, you have confirmed that for us with your sharing on death not being final. And I think that is what our grievers and mourners can take solace from today. So with that, I just say thank you. And as I offer you every week to close, I just want you to go to that mirror and look yourself in the eye and ask yourself, what do I need today? As June was saying, is it self-love? If it is, give that to yourself, whatever comes up, do that. And so with that, I say thank you. And just remember, don't do grief alone. Namaste. Thank you for being here. Love to all. Thank you. See you next time.
Thank
you. June, if you hang around afterwards, well, I'd love to talk more. Thank you.
Okay.
Ciao.
Ciao.